It's the late 1800s, Montello, Italy. Everyone was very conservative, extremely Catholic. You get married when you're young, have babies, then you die. That was the woman's role. Like, yay, it's so fun. So there was a man who lived in the same area as Emilia, and his name was Mariano. He ends up Emilia, and then she became pregnant. And the belief is that if you're pregnant and you are unwed, you better marry that man before anyone catches you pregnant out of wedlock. That would bring great shame to that person and also the family name. But her parents made her marry him. Poor thing. So Emilia gave birth to her baby, Leonarda. Sources go as far to say that Emilia actually despised her daughter. I mean, to her, it was a reminder of the trauma she had experienced. It was said that Leonarda, she grew up just starving for love. Well, when Leonarda becomes a teenager, hormones are whooshing and washing, and she's like trying to explore her little bit. So she's like getting a taste of different men out there. And she said that she preferred, much older men. Silver foxes. Silver daddies. And she's sick of hearing from her mother, Emilia, who is pushing her to marry someone who has money. Well, when Leonarda turns 21, she falls in love with a much older man. And his name was Raphael. He worked as a clerk. And he unfortunately didn't have a lot of money to his name. So when Leonarda's parents found out, they were obviously. But Leonarda, she stood her ground no matter what her parents said, and she was going to marry this man no matter what. Obviously, this made Emilia, her mother, very, very upset, to the point that she actually put a curse on Leonarda, which to you and I doesn't sound that scary, right? Like, oh, you cursed me, darn it. Back then, during this time, look, if you were cursed, if somebody put a curse on you, that was it. So lots of casual witchcraft happening over there. But like, what else are you going to do in the early 1900s? There isn't much else, right? Good for you. Good for you. Do your witchcraft. Yeah. So despite her mother's objections and the fact that she put a curse on her life, hopes, and dreams, Leonarda didn't care, okay? She went ahead and married Raphael. Well, after the two got married, they went on to try and start a family, have some children. But sadly, things did not come easily for Miss Leonarda. She became pregnant on 17 different occasions. Yes. I said 17. Now, only 4 of Leonarda's children survived. She had several miscarriages, stillbirths, and many dying after their birth. So poor thing is going through it. So it's fair to say Leonarda truly believes there's a curse on her. So with limited options, Leonarda, she decided to go seek some guidance from a fortune teller. This fortune teller tells Leonarda that she will live to, quote, see all of her children die. But she continues to go see this fortune teller and also different fortune tellers as well. And the news doesn't get better for her. A palm reader looked her dead in the eye and said, on one hand, I'm seeing you'll end up in prison. And on the other hand, it's showing that you're gonna end up in a criminal asylum. That's what your palms are telling me. Look, I hope they offer a discount if it's only bad news. So it's at this point that Leonarda kind of just, something goes off mentally. Everything seems to shift for her. She was now just fixating on making sure that her children were going to stay alive. Now, out of her children, she did have a favorite. Her favorite child was her oldest son, Giuseppe. It's the oldest son. I mean, it's always the oldest son, right? Well, the curse strikes again. I'm not even kidding. There's a big earthquake. It hits her town. Massive earthquake. Now, this earthquake kills more than 1,000 people and destroys a ton of different buildings. Leonarda and her husband's home collapsed. So they now were looking to move. They had to move. So they went to live in Correggio. So they went to live in Correggio. So the two, they pick up, they move. And then once they get settled into their new place, the marriage between Leonarda and Raphael, at this point, they've been together for 16 years, just completely fell apart. The two ended up deciding to separate. They separated because he went to jail. Yeah, I guess Raphael wasn't really that great of a guy. It got to a point where he was just all of the time. And then on top of that, he got caught for embezzling money, and it was from his job. So he was fired, he was charged with fraud, and then he was sent to prison. Now this seemed to be like the breaking point for Miss Leonarda. How much could one person take? Jeez. So Leonarda decides that she's going to make a new life for herself. And she did what most women do after a divorce or just like an overall hard life. She started making her own soap. Good for her. Hobbies are great. So Leonarda, she ended up moving onto the 3rd floor of a building. Out of her building, she would sell herbs, baked goods, soaps, and she was like very popular amongst the locals. They all knew her. It just sounds so cute, right? She had a reputation for dealing with the occult, and residents often asked her to reveal their future. She's a woman of many trades. So now we're entering into another chapter of Italian history. It's the rise of the dictator Mussolini and World War II. Both not great for Italy, just in case you didn't know. People were literally starving to death during this time. There was a lot of food shortages that were going on, and it was said to be just really rough. And the town that Leonarda lived in, it seemed to be hit really hard because there were numerous reports of people constantly leaving town to find better opportunities and honestly just food elsewhere. Leonarda, though, she was still going through it with her curse. Leonarda found out that her favorite son was going to war. It was her worst nightmare. She was spiraling after this. Even though Leonarda was having her own meltdown, she was still like considered the pillar in her community. Leonarda was there to kind of always have answers for everybody. Over time, she started to also evolve, and she kind of turned into a little matchmaker. So with that being said, it only made sense when one day in 1939, a friend of Leonarda's, her name was Rabidi, she came over to her house and was looking for some help. Leonarda's friend came from very humble beginnings. She was said to be uneducated, but most importantly, unmarried. You cannot be unmarried. And Rabidi told Leonarda that, she's about to turn 50 and she didn't want to spend the rest of her life alone. Her friend offers her money. She's like, look, I will give you my life savings if you set me up with somebody. And she wanted this more than anything. And even Leonarda would say that she could see like how bad her friend wanted this. And she agrees to help her out. For a fee, of course. She's not going to do it for free. Leonarda has a quick turnaround. And she tells her friend, look, I got the perfect guy for you. First of all, he lives in another town. I guess he lived in southern Italy. So she's like, you would have to move, but he's great. He has money. And Rabidi was like excited about that. She did not mind having to relocate. Second, Rabidi needs to write letters to her family and friends and tell them that she was super happy, like living her best life, before she left to meet her new boo. Kind of weird, right? Leonarda tells her like, oh, don't worry about it. I'll send the letters for you, but you have to write them now. Well, on December 17th, 1939, Rabidi took Leonarda's advice and she left her with letters, and then she left town, and no one had ever heard from her again. Maybe she got lost. Or maybe something else happened. Once again, Leonarda, she became the talk of the town, and she was now the go-to person for fortune readings and matchmaking. Plus, she also was like a job recruiter. So the following year, a widower named Francesca comes to see Miss Leonarda, and she's feeling kind of desperate. Now, this time, though, she wasn't looking for a man. She was actually looking for help finding a job. So she tells Francesca that she found the perfect job as a headmistress of a fancy boarding school in a town nearby. Francesca's like, oh my God, yay! Oh my God, thank you. Aw. Leonarda gives her the same set of weird rules. You need to give me some money. You need to write your family some letters. Don't tell anyone any details of where you're going. And that she basically, once she's done writing those letters, she has to leave right away. What's a rush? I don't know. So she convinces Francesca to leave her, all of her furniture. So Leonarda can, sell it for her. And then she would send the profits back to Francesca in the mail. I mean, that Leonarda, she's just so selfless. Well, Francesca, she does what she's supposed to. She leaves her home and never heard from again. Well, Francesca's family, they were very worried about her, okay? They even stopped by Leonarda's to ask, like, if she had heard from her. And it was very unlike Francesca to not communicate with the family what she's doing, what's going on, blah, blah, blah. Leonarda, though, she reassures them that everything is fine. She's probably just busy with work. So Leonarda gifts the family some of her homemade soaps as like feel better gifts and sends the family on their way. Just a few months later, again, someone else out of a job because of the war shows up at Leonarda's door. Now, her name was Virginia, and she was 53 years old and an opera singer. And wouldn't you know it, just like that, Leonarda had the perfect job for her. She's like, oh my God, this is crazy. Come on in. Anyway, Leonarda would find this out-of-work opera singer a job working as a secretary for a theatrical producer in Florence. Now, it would cost her like 50,000 lire, and also she wanted some precious gems. So Virginia agrees to the money and the gems, and then Leonarda tells her the rules, just like as the ones previously. And this time her instructions were even like a little bit more strict than the other girls. She told Virginia that she had to tell absolutely no one any details about the job or when she was leaving. So Leonarda is telling Virginia that she needs to hurry up, write the letters, leave them on the table. Like, she needed to hurry up because somebody could quickly scoop up that job. And on November 30th, 1940, Virginia does exactly that. And just like the others, she's never heard from again. This time, though, people weren't just going to ignore Virginia's disappearance, because little did Leonarda know that there was an actual eyewitness who saw Virginia's last whereabouts. And it wasn't at a theater in Florence. It was at Leonarda's front door. Ooh. Okay. Virginia's relatives, they go straight to the police. That's when the police are really starting to put the pieces together. And they're like, hey, it's kind of weird that like all three of these women were known to visit Leonarda and just so happened to disappear. So they go ahead, police go down and interview Leonarda. But, like, they didn't even think she did anything. And as soon as police arrived at Leonarda's house, it was said that she was just so charming. She offered them some coffee to come on in, have a seat. They talked about her ex-husband, and she raved about her beloved son, Giuseppe, and how devastated she was that he was off fighting the war. It was actually believed that her son Giuseppe was the one who was like behind the disappearances. That's what police originally thought. Leonarda ends up at the police station for questioning. And the second they questioned her on the disappearance of these three women, Leonarda confessed instantly to her crimes. Yeah, she didn't even like kind of resist or anything. She was like, yep, me. Leonarda tells the police those three women aren't missing. They're actually dead. Leonarda had murdered them all brutally. She had a reason to justify this, so she believed. When the troubles of war started and Giuseppe was sent to fight, Leonarda, she wanted to find a way to ensure that her son would be protected. She remembered something she had read in an occult book, and it said that one paid for a life with another life. Leonarda had to take a life so her kids didn't lose their lives. It was like a sacrifice. And unfortunately, poor Robiti was the first life she chose to take. So on December 17th, 1939, Robiti stops by Leonarda's place to say goodbye. She only meant to stop by Leonarda's place, but Leonarda is like, oh my God, you should like stay for a little bit. So she pulls out a bottle of wine, pours Robiti a glass, and after a few sips, Robiti fully passes out. Leonarda had her. Next, Leonarda said that she picks up like a huge sharp axe and hacks her unconscious body to death. She then pulled Robiti into a dark room. She's like, I have to find a way to get rid of the body. And then she got to work baking with it. Leonarda bakes delicious tea cakes. She even like served these cakes to her friends in town. But most importantly, she sent some to her son, Giuseppe, to share with his friends at war. Well, Leonarda had convinced herself if Giuseppe ate the human cake and lived, then she did the right thing by following the occult Save Your Son guide. Leonarda said Giuseppe wrote to her, which further proof that he was safe from the war and thanked her for the treats. And this is when she knew she was right. That book was right. The key was a life for a life. She's like, confirmed. So then Leonarda tells the investigators Francesca's story, which was very similar to Rabiti's. And again, no surprise, she did the same thing with Virginia. This time though, when she cooks down Virginia's body parts, she turns her body into soap bars. Well, in 1940, Leonarda was charged and waited in prison for her trial. Leonarda had to wait for World War II to play out before she could go to trial. But when Leonarda finally stood trial 6 years later in 1946, it was said that she was oddly calm, really calm. She even told the authorities with pride, quote, "I gave the copper ladle, which I used to skim the fat off the kettles, to my country, which was so badly in need of metal during the last days of the war." And then when she finally went to trial, she had spent 6 years in prison. You know what she did? She'd been working on a 700-page handwritten confession of all of her crimes, and it was called, quote, "Confessions of an Embittered Soul." Many of the very specific details of the case that we know today are actually from her confession. And one thing most agreed on is that the confession from Leonarda definitely helped her get a psychiatric diagnosis, aka she was able to avoid the death penalty. Leonarda was sentenced to 3 years in an asylum and 30 years in prison. In the end, in 1970, at the age of 77, Leonarda had a stroke and died in prison. I will be seeing you guys later. Bye. Thank you.